As a female war reporter, I was always acutely aware that when something goes wrong, I would be characterized as reckless.
Jane Ferguson has spent more than 15 years reporting from the front lines of some of the world's most dangerous conflict zones. But for all her courage under fire, her biggest challenge came when, at the height of her career, she hung up her boots to launch Noosphere, a fast-growing media startup connecting audiences directly with the journalists they trust.
The fear is, what if this doesn't work, but in pursuing this, I sacrifice everything else?
In today's episode, we sit down to talk about how becoming a first-time founder shook Jane's sense of self and why sometimes the bravest move you can make is to start over.
I really believe whenever we look at courage, it's very often a kind of weighted system of, pleasure, pain, like which pain is worse, staying still or go?
In a culture obsessed with success, this show explores an uncomfortable truth. It is failure, not success, that shows us who we really are and teaches us what to do next. I'm your host, Alanna Lynch, and this is Fail Up. Jane, welcome to Fail Up.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. That bio is so impressive.
Thank you.
It's so impressive.
I like the way you read it.
I love it. Like when you hear that, like what comes up for you?
What's so interesting for me is that it feels like all of that stuff came at the end. You know what I mean? Like it feels like that only happened just recently. And like there was like 15 years of trying to make that happen first. And then it was like, boom, this happened.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It's like the overnight success that's been working on it for 40 years.
The overnight success, yes, that you know has been due for a long time.
Yeah, everyone always says that. It always feels like they're an overnight success, but there's always decades before that. But it's so impressive.
Thank you.
Like I feel like if that was my bio, I would frame it.
And
like give it to my dad for Christmas or something. I'd be like, this is your Christmas present. Okay, we're going to just like softball as we go in. We're just getting a little grounding of how we met.
How did we meet? We met in New York City.
We met in New York City, yeah.
I remember we went to La Conde Verde for dinner.
We did, that's right.
Oh, first of all, you came to my Christmas Eve party, which got cancelled because of COVID. I bought a very expensive, massive Christmas tree to fit in like this wild old loft that I was living in.
Oh my God, that's right.
You were
the one in Tribeca.
Trooper. Yeah. Yes. And I was afraid of getting accused of hosting a super spreader event. So I had to cancel the party. And I had all this food and it was just lovely to get to know you.
Yeah, I remember that now. I'd kind of forgotten about that.
You knew this guy that I was dating?
Yeah.
And now he's my husband.
And your baby daddy.
And my baby daddy.
Your husband and baby daddy is one of my oldest friends in New York. But I know I remember that apartment. It was like in an old Tribeca loft, right? And wasn't there like some sailor or something?
Like the guy who owned it had basically sublet it to me because, for all this fancy resume I have, like that's a very long-winded way of saying I don't have a job. So, like, who's going to rent me an apartment? And so I found another adjunct professor who was out of town because of COVID and teaching via Zoom. And he also used to do, but he had decided to, skip town and go to Florida and do boat tours.
Of course.
And he had this loft that he bought. It sounds so fancy, Tribeca and loft, but he bought it in 1973 or something.
Wow.
Hadn't touched it. Like, one day, the window fell in. It was this amazing, massive space that was just falling apart.
Yeah. Really you were funny. Like, we will just freeze to death tonight.
Yes.
Well, we've become really good friends since then. And I've just obviously been following your career at the same time and just eternally inspired by you.
Thank you.
And everything you're doing. We also bonded over our shared love of the Irish culture.
That's very true.
Irish people.
We're both Irish.
We're both Irish.
But you're like Irish, not like Irish American. Like
no,
you're actually Irish.
Actually Irish. So both my parents are born in Ireland, so first generation Aussie. Mm-hmm. And then I found my kindred spirit, which is maybe a nice kind of segue into I want to hear a little bit more around, you obviously grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. Just segue from Tribeca loft into the Troubles. Really clean. But,
it was very similar. The small pig and sheep farm I grew up on in Armagh Very similar.
Very similar. How did that experience shape who you became and the career you ended up choosing?
Hugely. When I look back, I was born in 84, so it was right in the middle of the Troubles. But the thing is, when you're a kid, and one thing I've learned a lot covering conflicts is that everything is normal when you're a child, right? So like you don't walk around when you're 7 or 8 thinking, oh, I'm a child of conflict.
Right.
Like, you just walk around thinking it's perfectly normal that people are divided by sectarian lines.
Right.
And sometimes rebels pop up and kill people. And then sometimes, things explode and people get put in jail and blah, blah, blah. And I was super inquisitive. Like, I ask questions all the time. And when you're growing up in sectarian societies, you're not really supposed to ask questions. Like, you're supposed to just accept things as they are. And so I was really obsessed with getting answers. And I wanted to understand the world around me so much. And of course, it's no coincidence that I ended up, for loads of my career as a journalist, covering insurgencies. Like, I was just fascinated. I was like, what makes people, ordinary people like bakers and cab drivers and farmers, like, commit acts of violence, and sometimes rise up against the odds, against really powerful states that are repressive. And so I was fascinated by all of that. At the same time, it was also a super patriarchal culture. Like, I didn't have in my life, in my circles, female professional role models, but TV news was a place where I was, watching all these women reporting. And they were on the BBC every night, on like the local TV, on Irish TV. There were all sorts of female foreign correspondents. Add into that the fact that I needed a bit, like I was really looking for adventure. Selfishly. It wasn't like I'm off to save the world all the time. It was like, I can't believe there's a job out there where someone pays you to travel around the world and tell stories and see interesting things. So
I want to get out of here.
A total wanderlust, and I want to get out of here.
Yeah, I want to get out of here.
3 days after my last high school exam, I got on an airplane.
And where was that plane going? Where did you
Initially,
land?
I went to India for the summer. Wow. And then I went here to the States. To boarding school for a year.
That's right.
But I was a bit of a dork. So, like, I went to boarding school during my gap year.
I wish I knew little Janie. Like, it was just like in our notebooks, like writing all
Little Janie had mousy brown hair, very thick glasses,
I can see it.
Devastating acne, was like super sort of tomboyish and shy. Like, yeah, really, really ready for reinvention.
Well, you definitely went through a massive reinvention, and you went from that shy little nerdy girl with all her acne to, as I said in the beginning, like one of the bravest people I've ever met. I'm curious if that bravery has ever felt like a burden to you.
I think sometimes I have leaned on it more than maybe developing other skills. Like, for a while, I felt like courage was sort of the only thing I had to offer the world.
Interesting.
And certainly when I was younger, in my 20s. And I think that came down to self-esteem, which I didn't have a lot of. I had bravado in war zones, but and certainly when it came to career decisions, and I took risks. I took a lot of risks professionally, physically, but I didn't always. I think sometimes I would just put that out into the world and be like, look how brave I am. And then that would be how I viewed myself. It became a bit linear.
How did you have the confidence to take, like, if you're saying you felt like you had low self-esteem, but then you're also, on the other hand, taking all these really extreme risks, like, how did you find the confidence?
I always, if I'm honest, like, the thing a lot of people, I think, miss when they look at risk taking is they forget the risk of standing still. And I was more afraid of missing out on my dreams than I was of going for it. Like, I was oftentimes, perhaps to a fault, like running from this sense of leading a boring life that had been designed by someone else. Like, I wanted to live a life that was entirely intentional, that was something I wanted for me. I wanted every decision to be one that I that asserted my own independence. And so, yeah, I think that's like, I really believe whenever we look at courage, it's very often a kind of weighted system of, pleasure, pain, like which pain is worse, staying still or going? And very often I weighed up the thing that I was leaving behind, whether it was a job I decided to quit or a country I was going to, go to, or a relationship throughout my life. Once you're honest with yourself about staying being harder, it's an easy choice.
Yeah, I agree. Often the most riskiest decision is to do nothing.
Yeah.
Or to stay where you are. It's interesting. It almost like is like the true immigrant story, right? Of like coming from a place where you wanted more, and that is what drives you to kind of your ambition and your courage and to keep pushing your career forward.
Well, I think also when you think about the immigrant experience, there's something rather freeing about being an outsider. And having been a foreign correspondent, it's kind of your job to be an outsider. I think that's why I took to it so well. I'd always felt like an outsider growing up. I didn't really feel like I fit in where I was growing up at all. And I kind of made that a profession. Like I walk into people's houses and bounce their babies on my knee, and their hospitality is incredible. Or I'll walk into cultures and companies, and I'll walk into, government offices where it is my job to be an outsider, observing and telling stories. And so sometimes I do think that it can be an incredible strength.
What's the benefits of that approach?
I think it allows you to not feel like you have to fit in everywhere just to be in the room. You can also become pretty emotionally intelligent at sort of reading people and places and understanding like almost with an anthropological kind of view of the world.
Definitely.
Now, of course, there's all sorts of problems with viewing yourself as an outsider, but that's what I love about New York City. It's like everyone's an outsider. Totally. Like you never feel like there's no sense of belonging in New York City other than paying the rent and figuring out the subway system. Like, now you belong. Well done.
It's an expensive belonging.
That's
expensive way of belonging. You spent 15 years reporting from some of the most dangerous conflict zones in the world. I'm really curious how that shaped the kind of leader that you've become.
The pluses of having worked in unbelievably intense environments are learning to what most people don't realize about war reporting or working in conflict zones and really hostile environments is it's not really like you walk around all day long in fear for your life. Yes, there are parts of your job.
I think I would.
There are moments where you are in fear for your life. Thankfully, those are relatively rare, but there are certainly moments where like there's a sense of risk in the air. But what's really happening is that you wake up in the morning, you're planning to go from this place to do an interview with that person, and then to this place to shoot this. Everything falls apart. And your job is to make it work again. And then that falls apart. And your job is, and so like the sense of the gritty sense of getting around impossible odds, everything falling to shit, and then not like, collapsing on the floor, learning not to like lose your temper, learning to navigate all of that. And there might be like 2 or 3 times in the day where everything falls apart and you have to redo it. So that's been an incredibly helpful skill in like basically getting around seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Because all it is doing a regular TV job in impossible environments.
Circumstances.
So that's really it. The other thing that I really learned was working with very, very different cultures. And people in those, because I was hiring teams like whether they might be Yemeni or Afghan or Somali and working in different cultures and learning to communicate with people the best I could in that way. And a lot of that involves letting go of control. Yeah. So that's the tightrope. It takes an extraordinary sense of control to be able to make things happen against the odds, but you have to let that control go when you're working with all of these teams who have their own way of doing things.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, you've just hit on like 3 incredibly important leadership skills: adaptability, resilience, grit, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. Because loads of failure.
Yeah, loads
Tons
of
of failure.
Yeah, and giving up control is crucial.
Definitely. The adaptability, I think, is probably an incredibly underappreciated, like, superhuman quality.
I agree.
I have an intern in my office right now who is a female Afghan journalist.
Okay.
Who came here and basically just yesterday got herself like an apartment in Manhattan. She grew up, she's 27. She grew up in Kabul. And fled, after Kabul fell, or before Kabul fell. She left Afghanistan, couldn't come back after Kabul fell to the Taliban. Found herself in New York, doing on a full ride scholarship to City University to do her master's. Yeah. But like the adaptability culturally,
oh, for sure,
she's alone completely. She has no family here. She found friends who are also studying here, other women from Afghanistan. She got herself an apartment and she got herself, everything pulled together. And like, she's still only in her 20s. That would be hard for anybody.
Yeah.
And, I'm so impressed by this person. And it's just an example of like adaptability shows up in our lives in all different ways. But like it's hard for me to imagine she's living this life that like I on that farm in Northern Ireland would have dreamed of, but also struggled to adapt to. And here she is coming from Kabul.
Yeah. It's wild. I think, back in our parents' generation, one of the key skills, I think, for people to sustain a career was almost loyalty. Stay, just like, I'm going to stay at this place for 40 years and I'm going to stick it out. And maybe there's kind of a perseverance to that as well. And now I think it's the complete opposite. It's like, how adaptable can you be? And, you should be jumping around to different jobs. Technology is changing all the time. I think that's amazing that you learned that from that experience in the most extreme scenarios.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I was almost thinking, oh yeah, that's like this morning when everything went to shit when coming to the podcast. I was like, don't say that. Can't relate it to the war zone.
It's the same.
You're now kind of back from all these war zones.
I am.
You are a founder and CEO building an app-first news platform in Noosphere, which is super exciting. I'm curious how stepping into this role has challenged what you thought you knew about yourself.
Well, it challenges your pride to leave a career that you were very successful in.
Yeah.
Like, it's very hard, if you're honest with yourself, to walk away from applause and being on TV.
Yeah.
And collecting trophies and totally. Getting invited to speaking things, blah, blah, blah. You know what it's like to be heralded as... And I had worked my whole career to try to reach a certain point of success where it felt sustainable. There was always that monkey on your back, like, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like it's going to last. It doesn't, like, it could be over tomorrow. And so it was liberating, but it's also frightening because you're walking away from validation. And you're going from the top of the totem pole to kind of the bottom.
You're a beginner again.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not entirely true that you are at the bottom because you're still leveraging your reputation and your connections. But, you're no longer like a success yet. You've gone back to being someone who plans to be successful again, which is very interesting for me. Like, I am kind of a big deal in certain media circles, not so much in financial circles, or I have learned. And so I'll be in meetings and people will have no idea who I am. And I'm like, okay. That's fine.
Do you want me to print out my
It's like, I have a
bio?
I have a really great resume.
No. Do you want to shine one of my Emmys?
Yeah, I have 2 DuPonts, and you don't know what those are, but they're very impressive. So that is...
I relate to this so much even starting my own business, right? Yeah. Like, you go from being in the corporate world and you're in an executive role, and that comes from all this... external validation,
Totally.
but all the internal confidence you get from being in those roles too.
It's a label. Like you had a super impressive title to be, COO or CMO, all sorts of like big titles that begin with C.
Yeah.
And then it's hard. Like,
yeah. And you're a beginner again. And I have found that is incredibly scary, but also there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in being the beginner because you're just more open. I don't know if you found this, but you're more open to hearing different perspectives because you might not, because you don't know everything about this thing. So I find I'm more curious about things. I'm more open. I'm taking more risks. And so I think there's
also
a plus
extraordinary freedom though as well. It's kind of thrilling to learn new things, like you're saying.
Totally, yeah. And then that's motivating.
Yes.
And then when you do the thing and then you crush it at the thing, you get even more confidence because you're like, now I have more evidence that I can do more things.
And to backtrack to like the fancy careers, like the truth is I also, and not to knock anyone who does the same thing their whole career, but like I did recognize that there's a point where beyond a certain point, it's harder to pivot. You kind of have to take success and then take it somewhere else.
And leave on a high.
You got to be like Madonna, right? Like, doesn't she like always reinvent? Like you have to like, you have to like be 2 or 3 steps ahead of yourself.
Yeah. It's also good to pivot your career on a high. It's much harder to pivot your career on because our careers all have highs and lows. Or they just
cyclical. Sort of stagnate. Like you can get to the top.
Yeah.
And then I saw this a lot in my industry. People would get to the top and there's nowhere else to go other than to defend your position, which becomes a very defensive, sometimes unpleasant kind of place to be. Not that people who work in TV news aren't always the loveliest human beings on the planet. But like, yeah, it's far better to tap out and be like, good luck to the youngsters. I'm giving you this chair. I'm off. I've got other mountains to climb.
And also pivot when you're kind of walking towards something as opposed to when maybe it's in a slump and then you're trying to like, just figure out like out of necessity. Like
agreed.
Pivot to opportunity versus necessity. Can we go back to the thing you said about pride?
Yes.
This is the Irish in us. This is all our internalized shame.
Totally. Totally.
Let's get it out.
How are you bad, Alanna?
We must go to reconciliation and tell some old man in a closed off dark cabinet how bad we are.
How bad are you?
How weird is confession? Anyway, that is the weirdest part of the Catholic Church to me is, well, you're Protestant.
Well, we were raised.
Did Protestants also
we just
do the reconciliation booth?
Just keep the shame in. Like, don't share that.
Well, ours was mostly keep it in, except go to this random guy who's in literally a cabinet.
Yeah.
And then
whisper it through a wall. So weird. Whisper it through a wall.
So weird. And then he's like, okay, I was like, oh, okay, so I needed his validation as well about what I was doing.
We would just, I feel like Presbyterians have that early version of cry on the inside like a winner. So,
Never heard that before. They're so Irish. Cry on the inside like a winner.
You've never heard cry on the inside like a winner?
It's so good.
It's not very in vogue at the minute.
So we've touched on this a little bit, but you seem to consistently choose a really hard path. Your career is a little bit like choose your hard.
I know.
Choose your hard. It's like war zones to startup life to academia, especially now. It's like choose your hard. We've talked a little bit about, how your childhood kind of led you there, but I'm curious if there's a thread that connects, like what's the thread that connects all of these experiences for you?
There is a thread. It's probably one to discuss with my therapist as well as you. I would say one of my weaknesses is an inability to say no when an opportunity comes to me. I'm still this kid from state school in Ireland who can't believe someone just called me up from Princeton and asked me to teach a course, who can't believe I got invited to that conference to speak. And I think there's a degree of insecurity that's married to vanity where I can't say no because it feels like, well, opportunities like this never come around. And so part of my challenge is learning to, manage what I say yes to instead of chasing every dream at the same time, because it almost seems too impossible that it's real for me. And so I do have a tendency to do that. I got so wildly overscheduled this year where I agreed to teach at Princeton, which was so wonderful. And I loved it. My students were so nice. But like, I remember getting off the phone and my husband was like, I heard that call. He was like, you just started a company.
I'm laughing because I also remember this feeling of being like, you're what? I was like, you're going to do, I was like, okay. I mean, that seems crazy, but like you do you. Like, I'm going to jump in and do a media startup, but also be a professor at Princeton. But I don't know, maybe the experience as a professor, I imagine it also gives you confidence that then feeds back into Noosphere in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but at the same time, you can run yourself ragged trying to prove that you can do all of it.
Maybe Princeton's like the validation that's the TV moment for you while you're in the startup just getting killed every day.
That's true. Like the startup world can be humiliating.
Totally.
Like there's total humiliation.
Like daily failures.
True. At Princeton, you're like, well, this startup is what it is right now, but I'm also this, so I get a gold star. You know.
I've really been rocking my Princeton Tigers hat.
Oh,
in Australia. Yeah.
You should come back and visit again.
I will. This is a great segue. My next question is actually about what's going on right now with academia, obviously, and the US government. And I'm curious, obviously, in your role as a professor and just a woman of the world, how do you make sense of what's going on? And also, what does leadership look like in this moment?
It's pretty obvious to me that this is essentially an attempt to achieve a political purpose through what is sort of really an act of sabotage, it's sort of an act of vandalism. There's a degree of there's a vandal mindset to just get in there and smash stuff and stop money going. And it doesn't feel like there's a real intention from this government to actually improve and work with universities to fix some sort of problems they've seen. There's a desire to punish. And I think that is really damaging and dark. And it's also a psychological phenomenon, I think that desire to wield power to punish others is obviously happening all across the board.
Yeah.
Political enemies, opposition, legal firms. But in universities, there's real generational damage that can be done here. Research that vanishes, brain drains where academics move to Canada, Europe, elsewhere. It's really frightening. And it's sort of a pseudo-political psychological attack.
And what do you think strong leadership would look like in this moment? Like what would you hope to see from some of these presidents? And the college presidents, I mean, not the...
It sounds corny, but it's tried and tested. Like, you got to stand by your values. You got to look at what your values actually are. They're usually written down. And actually stand by them. And show some balls. It's just a threat around money. You're hundreds and hundreds of years old institutions. You're going to panic over a massive chunk of your budget. You're part of history. You're part of this country. Leadership of an institution like that is caretaker roles. You are there to help this institution survive. And if the values don't survive, it's just a shell of an institution. So that matters way more than finances.
I think that's a really good insight because, often the values, when you go into a company and the values are on the screensavers or written on the wall or whatever, but they don't really mean anything until someone acts on them.
Exactly.
Right? And they're only ever really tested when in tough situations. Your values are not tested when things are going well.
Nope.
Because you're able to just act, in accordance with them easily. They're tested when you're under pressure. So I actually think it's a really good insight that Yeah, when shit hits the fan, and that's when the real test is going to be.
How many people
that's
are
what
tested
you'll be defined by.
In this current political moment, how many people are being tested?
Totally.
And I've seen people under exceptional pressure. That's one thing that war exposes you to, and not just combat, but actually being in situations where people have every reason to be anxious for their own survival. And it tests people, and it's fascinating to watch people who fail and those who succeed. And what I do know about being in life and death situations is nothing is worth behaving in a way that you'll regret later. You carry that with you, you know, you never regret doing the right thing.
Yeah, I guess what you're hitting at is a moral, there's a moral failing.
There is a moral failing that I understand, because it's frightening and scary, and most people didn't sign up for this kind of test. But, you know, that's what life on this planet is like.
That's true. Pain and suffering. How do you think about failure, like for yourself, not just professionally, but personally?
Well, you know, for me, I think about it as one thing I've always struggled with is when to accept that something is failure, because I'm so gritty and so determined, and I'm always like, no, this is just an obstacle to get around. Really? And it's hard for me to accept failure and to even recognize it in the first place. You know, I remember, you know, I've always wondered what's the point at which you're supposed to never give up, keep going, to the point at which you're like, this isn't working.
Yeah, when do you call it?
When do you call it?
Yeah, and how do you figure out when to call it? Like, what's your red line, I guess?
I think for me, failure is usually when I recognize that I'm fighting for something that I might no longer really want. And I'm fighting for it out of purpose, out of like...
spite.
Yeah, or even just to make a point. Yeah,
make a point. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, like I've worked so hard at this, I'm just going to keep going until the end.
Or I'll be embarrassed to give up.
Yeah,
you know,
which that is even interesting in and of itself. It's like the fear of the failure and the embarrassment is actually what makes it worse, because we just keep going.
Yeah, and also,
which is wild. Yeah,
it does make it worse. And then like you kind of ask yourself, is this worth it? But then it's difficult because you're also haunted by those times where you nearly gave up, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard.
How do you make that call? Like, how do you make the call?
I think, first of all, you have to ask yourself why you want what you want. Like you might say, like for a long time, I wanted my own TV show. Like I wanted to have a show where I could really engage people and where I wasn't like flitting off all around the world to cover news. And I pitched it to a network I was working at, and I really wanted this. I felt like I could bring great conversations together, and I knew the guests that I wanted, and I just couldn't get it over the line. Like all sorts of politics and networks and what was going on and blah blah blah. And it was hugely ambitious. And then you got to get a segment, and then then there's all these people who already have that half hour, and so it gets difficult. And I remember fighting for it for a long time and coming up against so much opposition. Some of it was really unfair. But I remember asking myself, like, why do I want it? Like, is there something else I can do that makes me feel like I'm building something? And so it sounds like a cop-out, but you can ask yourself, like, why is it that I've become fixated on this one thing, but ultimately there's something else that I'm looking to get through it. Is there another route there? And so that was really helpful.
I'd say centering back into your why and your purpose, I think, is important.
Definitely. The place where I get distracted when something's not working out, and the thing that can be very lethal is self-pity. Like when it's not fair. Yeah. Like it's, that's when like your inner 8-year-old like stomps her foot and starts crying. And like, it took me so many years to learn. And even now I'm still learning, but I'm much better than where I was 5-10 years ago. Like careers and work are not fair.
Totally.
People can be horrifically unfair and mean. And that's part of the game,
And you're not entitled to success.
Precisely.
This is the other thing that I think everyone just assumes that you're, it's like, no.
No.
Very few people are going to hit the level of success that everyone imagines. And it's like, how, are you willing to withstand the pain you need to get there?
And if you zoom out, like, and look at your career more broadly, or your life, whatever it is you're trying to succeed at, like, the reality is it cannot be about one thing. Like, I've tried probably for 3 or 4 massive things in my life, maybe 5 huge goals, and I think I've achieved 3 of them. And so you can't let the other 2 like destroy you.
I remember when we went through your 5-year plan.
Yes.
We sat at a bar.
We talked about it in Princeton, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure we sat at a bar and drank a lot of red wine and went through your 5-year plan.
That's right.
And I was like, God damn, she's actually made a lot of progress.
I was like,
I went home and I was like, oh my God.
Well,
I too want to become a billionaire.
No, it's so cheesy to say, because I'm quoting, I think, Tony Robbins.
Oh God.
I wish I was quoting like Plato or something, but I read a lot of self-help, but those books go on the bottom shelf. So when I do interviews for TV, it's all just like Plato and the history of the Middle East. How to unfuck yourself is at the bottom of the shelf. But he said, we often overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. And it's really, really true in my experience. Like, 1 year is not enough, but 5 years, you can be like pretty impressed with how far you get down the road with just a handful of big goals.
Oh, totally. I have found that even with starting Melio Futuri, I was like, this will be where I want it to be in a year. And it's like, I'm almost 2 years in now, and it's only now starting to really kind of take off. And it took so much time of just like chipping away. And so I'm excited to see, okay, what is this going to look like in 5 years? And you've just got to be okay with some short-term pain.
100%.
Short-term pain, long-term gain.
Yeah.
We've touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, just, when you think about failure, what comes up for you? Besides our internalized shame.
A lot of else besides the internalized shame. I would say one of the like scary voices around failure for me, I think I remember thinking this about my career in TV every time I had a failure, like, and a lot of them I documented in the book. Like, there were so many jobs I just did not get, and so many breaks that I just couldn't get over the line. The fear is, what if I've put it all on the line for this and this doesn't work, but in pursuing this, I sacrificed everything else? Like, that was my big frightening thing, was what if I reach a certain age? Because in TV news, less so now, but when I was coming up, women aged out cruelly young.
How young?
Well, I remember someone telling me once, if you're not, they thought it was kindly advice, but it was actually a total headfuck, was if you're not a household name by the time you're 35, you're never going to be. And I mean household name.
That's why. By the time like you're 30, 3 people.
Yeah. And so you're like, oh, okay, I'm 32 and still trying to make this work. So, but I remember thinking, I will have sacrificed my entire personal life.
Yeah.
I have no kids. Not that that's like some sort of terrible disaster, but like it had never even occurred to me to have a family of my own. And I have nothing else. And that fear of like, which is nonsense. It's a little bit of a lie, but it whispers in your ear.
Yeah.
If this fails, I have nothing else, which isn't true. Yeah. And frankly, when something fails, suddenly for the first time in your life, there's a vacuum and other stuff just rushes into it anyway. Doesn't take you very long.
Do you find that can be a motivator though? I'm kind of relating to that idea of putting I also have put a lot into my own career over the years and sacrificed a lot of my personal life.
Yeah.
And in some ways, once I was in it too far, like I feel like, you work your ass off, you get to a certain point, you reach that point and you're like, oh my God, I'm in it now and I'm on a path. And I have there's been some things I've sacrificed along the way. And I've had that moment where you're like, okay, but we're in it too deep now, so I better double down.
Yes.
It's like, I better double down and get all those things.
That's true.
Because for me, I've also found, because I'm not married and I don't have kids, I feel more pressure that my career needs to be this extraordinary success.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what has she been doing with the time?
Right.
Otherwise, if she's not raising the kids, like, you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. You're supposed to have this big trophy.
Yeah, which is wild, because then you're just putting so much pressure on this one side of your life, and then it forces you to almost keep doubling down on this, and then it's, you know, you're digging yourself into this hole.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, because you've got to be able to pull out of that and dedicate time elsewhere. But I've also found it motivating at times.
It is. There's no denying. Like,
because you're like, you
have to burn the ships. Like, you really do.
Yikes.
You have to.
At
there
times.
has to be a point of no return. Like, there are moments in every success story where there has to be a point of no return. Like, where you're in. And there can't be that hesitancy. But I agree, like, the pressure, it's crazy, like, to think that, like, because you've made these other sacrifices, like, that in any way means you're going to be more successurable.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's what the pressure is, because then you're like, this better fucking work.
Right.
You know? And
exactly.
It's like more pressure.
I remember feeling that way financially.
Yeah,
Most people didn't realize. I had this incredibly successful career on paper, but I didn't make very much money.
Yeah, journalists, yeah.
And so
that makes sense.
I was working in public broadcasting.
Yeah.
I wasn't on 60 Minutes, you know, and I was winning all of these awards and I was constantly getting celebrated. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking, I sacrificed financial security for this. I didn't grow up with a dime.
Yeah.
Which almost made it worse, because I should have been the kid who went off to, like, become a lawyer or work in the corporate world.
Right.
And so I remember thinking, like, if I fail at this, I'm going to be broke. And I succeeded and was broke, so it was fine.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, this is such a, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I have thought about this a lot. And yeah, there's positives and negatives to that. You know, you have to be able to pull yourself out of it. And I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm like, I can see it from a more bird's eye view, you know, and I'm able to pull myself out of that. But I think a lot of people get stuck in that, I think.
It does lean into, though, a current discussion about work-life balance, which I have an unpopular perspective at the minute, which is that I don't think you can have massive success and have a work-life balance for certain parts of your life. Like, I've been asked I know that very young people are these days massively prioritizing that, and I get it, but I don't think there's a sense of realism around success. Like, I've been asked by students, like, do you have a work-life balance in war reporting? And I remember being like, do you mean smoking like 40 cigarettes a day and working 20-hour days?
Yeah. And I guess the question, like, I always put it back on the person. It's like, it all comes down to your goals. Everyone can have work-life balance. If that's what you want, you can have it. But there's always going to be someone that has different goals than you. There's always going to be someone that's willing to work longer and, you know, put in the hard yard. So, yeah, if you want work-life balance, you can take it, but you need to accept that someone will probably surpass you.
Right, exactly.
And you've just got to be comfortable with that. And
Precisely.
You know, it depends what your goals are.
Yeah.
And if your goals is to have a more balanced life and you want all those things, which maybe that's a path I should have gone down, then you probably can get it.
And, you know, in some ways that makes it quite fair. Like, some of the people who are just sacrificing and sacrificing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. But at the same time, you don't want to burn out. You know, that's.
What's your experience with burnout been?
Constant flirtation with it. Rarely, like, really stepped over the line.
You've never burnt out completely?
No, I've never burnt out completely, where I've had moments of extraordinary emotional and physical and mental exhaustion. I always had a bit of a survival instinct where I would come back from an assignment that had gone on, sometimes for months, and I would take time off, and I would be at home, just like cooking and gardening.
Oh, that's good. So you actually had kind of little, like, almost like a sports team. You almost had like an off season.
I was really fortunate to have those. They weren't.
That's critical. Like, people need off seasons. I always think
Totally.
about that with burnout. Like, elite athletes have an off season where they're not training like crazy every day, and they're just kind of, they're still working on themselves and they're still working on their health, but they're not operating at that level of intensity.
Yeah.
And in corporate life, we don't have there's no off season, especially in the creative industry. There's never an off season.
I'm experiencing that now for the first time in like startup
life.
world.
There's no off season. Yeah, you've got to try and bake that in, especially on the journey that you're on now. Like, you have to bake in an off season.
Yeah.
Speaking of the road, I'm curious about, we're talking going between the different worlds that you've lived in, between the war reporting and now startup life. What did failure look like when it was in the field where mistakes, could be a matter of life and death? And like, did that change your relationship with it,
Well, it did. First of all, there were all these different ways that I could have failed, right? There was the editorial failure, which was frightening professionally, and
the live on air saying something
embarrassing.
Wrong. Yeah. Did you ever fuck that up?
Like, small stuff. So, like, editorial stuff, if you make a mistake, that's obviously small, that's a typo.
Yeah.
But like, big stuff will keep you awake at night. I'm fortunate that I have not had an editorial mistake, but like, I've been beaten to stories before. That's that's the other way that you can fail in the field. Like, someone else beats you to a story.
Right. But what about when you're in, I don't know what the example would be, but you guys go somewhere you're not meant to, when that ends up someone is now in danger and someone's life is in danger. Like, I don't
know that you could. That's risking a failure bigger than any other.
Yeah, and
because you're responsible as a leader.
Totally, and I'm so curious if that. I imagine if you were in that environment, you would become super risk adverse, right? Because the risks have such a strong, high consequence.
Yeah.
But you seem that you're still someone who is, pretty confident with taking risks. You have a pretty healthy relationship with it. Like, how did you kind of square those two things?
For me, looking at what failure would look like if something went wrong and someone got horribly injured or kidnapped or killed.
Yeah.
Those were like your three bad options.
Intense. All bad options.
All bad. And I was always the person making the decision. Okay, today we're going to go to that frontline position, and when we get there, we realize, well, actually, nothing's happening here. We really need to go down the road to that one. But between here and there, is it safe? Like, I'm taking on the fact that if anything goes wrong, I have to call the loved ones of any member of this carload of crazies I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I got to say, it was my call. And so I tended to lean into, and then obviously I was someone who had a very high appetite for risk.
Yeah.
So there's a tension there, because you never want any of your team to feel like there's pressure, but you also know that if anybody on the team objects, no one goes. Like, there's no like, man up, we're going. Like, there can never be that attitude.
Okay.
So I tended to work as much as I could just with people who I felt really, really understood the situation, had a lot of experience, but you can't always choose the team. And so for me, I handled it, to be honest with you, very often I went by myself. Like, I would just pick a camera and go, rather than feel like I want this other person, like, I would not risk this other person feeling like they can, that they're under pressure. And I read a lot about other journalists that had gotten into trouble, like they'd gotten kidnapped or the camera person had been killed. It happens all the time. And I just never wanted that on my conscience.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like also there's some insight there around personal responsibility or accountability as a leader too, right? You were willing to take the risk knowing that you were 100% accountable for the outcome. If you're willing to be accountable to the outcome, then you can take the risk.
Yes.
Don't take the risk if the outcome you're going to back out and suddenly, it's not my fault or whatever.
If it goes wrong, own that you made the decision to go.
And if you're not willing to own it and you're not willing to make the call to the family, then you can't do it.
Precisely. Because that is the really tough leadership role. And I must say that, like, I never really thought of myself in I hate starting sentences with, well, as a woman. But the truth was, as a female war reporter, I was always acutely aware that when something goes wrong, the female journalists, I believe, are often much more strongly criticized.
Oh, I believe it.
And we know this about women generally.
Yeah, for sure.
When women fail or or make a mistake, whether it's by their own fault or fate, they are judged more harshly. And I knew that if something went wrong, I would be characterized as reckless, impulsive, inexperienced. All of that would be drawn on. I would be infantilized, this girl that had gone out, and I was that was kind of, unfortunately in my mind a lot of the time was like, if this goes wrong, I will be criticized very, very, very badly.
Do you feel a similar way in corporate America?
Oh, 100%.
Like
we see that all the time.
This is a hypothetical question.
I know. Yeah.
Do you feel this way in corporate America in a tech startup?
We know that when women,
of course,
if women fail, they are, shamed so much more. And, there was a study that came out recently from Yale that showed that, it was a study on how difficult it is for women to raise venture capital, female-founded companies. And they said, and what they found was that not only obviously is it vastly harder for women to female-founded companies to raise venture capital, they also, the psychology of a VC, across the board, they are less likely to invest in women again if a female-founded company fails. When, of course, we all know that 9 out of 10 do.
And
startups.
then it's a numbers game, because if they're only given this many opportunities and, they're going to fail, then it looks like, women overall are failing. But it's like, it's this, I'm sure it's a similar percentage than men that are failing. It's just our sample size is so much smaller.
Precisely. And the psychology is that failure deep down reinforces a mistrust that was there in the first place.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things I've noticed about as a woman on the fundraising circuit.
That must be fascinating.
There's a fascinating psychology to money and gender. I still believe in my bones that deep down, part of the problem is, and this is attitudes from women and men, is that women, there's still an aversion to women who are seeking to create great wealth. I still think there's a distaste for it. Deep down, most people would absolutely go to their grave denying this, but there's still a sense that great wealth is not something women make, it's something they marry. And no one likes a greedy girl.
Yeah.
So we celebrate successful women, but do we celebrate women who are trying to be financially successful? Or do we find it a little cringe, as the kids would say? I still think you're more likely to be, and this goes from women as well. You're more likely to have a female friend introduce you to a wealthy suitor for a date than, hey, here's a guy who is a massive investor and I think he could be really interested in your company. It's not across the board, but generally speaking, we don't talk about these attitudes.
Oh, totally. I can see that 100%. I mean, how do you deal with that? Because you're obviously in the startup VC game.
You just, in my recent experiences, you just keep going. You just have to pitch more often, be more determined. You can't change that right now. You have to be successful and then try to change it afterwards. So you just have to keep going and beat the odds.
It's lucky you have all of this resilience. You have built up from built up from the road. I mean, speaking of this resilience, do you ever feel like sometimes I have the feeling, because I feel like I'm also a pretty resilient person and can push through. And then sometimes I'm like, I could do with being less resilient. I could do with being, I let the softness wash over me. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever have that feeling and just feel like your resilience has worked against you? Because maybe kind of to what we were saying before, it's like it's pushed you further than maybe you would have liked to be. Yeah,
I remember reading something that I thought was really wise. I don't know who wrote this, but they said that very often the thing that got you to here, so the thing that got you to this level of success can be the very thing that prevents you getting to the next level of success. It doesn't just stop working, it starts working against you.
What's that thing for you, do you think?
Trying to make things happen rather than let them happen. That's a tightrope I still walk. You know, those of us who are gunners and who are strivers, who feel like I can make everything happen, that comes from a psychology of not trusting that it will come to you in the first place. So there's an anxiety attached to it. And so trying to walk that. But of course, I'm not someone who thinks, I'm just going to sit here and think positive thoughts and everything will fall into my lap. I mean, we know that's ridiculous. You have to work hard. You have to have a vision, and you have to act on what you're trying to achieve. But I think that we can tie ourselves in knots trying to force life.
Just another, easy softball for you. What part of society do you think has failed us most profoundly? And what would it take for us to come back from it?
What part of society? Right now, I think we have lost a real sense of human empathy. You know, like in the States right now, it's a deeply cruel time. And I feel as though there's this constant, something that sort of really struck me in recent years in the States is there's a real invitation to hate these days coming, like it's subtle but everywhere. Like, and not to both sidesism everything, but like, obviously there's a profound dehumanizing right now of immigrants, of migrants, illegal migrants, and them being criminals, and these people eating the cats and dogs nonsense. Like, there's a real invitation to hate right now, and it scares me because it's so cruel. And I feel, but at the same time, then we also just came through the trauma of cancel culture, which was real, where cancel culture became a kind of, Lord of the Flies cruelty, where it was like, you're finished, you're out, you can never show your face again. I mean, there was this public shaming, like a psychological phenomenon, which was cruel too. And, right now, when you think about the leadership, the moral leadership of society that we looked up to in the past, looking at individuals like Gandhi and and leaders of the civil rights movement, this idea that like love should transcend all and cross boundaries, love thine enemies, that is gone on both sides. There is no love thine enemies right now. And it's a very dehumanizing time. I think that society has failed, there's very little moral leadership that actually advocates for, real love and compassion. And we have dehumanized one another to such an extent that I think that we're really at a point of moral crisis in this country. What needs to change is, I do think leadership is the way. There's no leadership right now who that is truly advocating a true sense of humanism. There's none there on either side of the aisle, I would say, and I find that really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it's really sad. We should have elected Bernie when we had the chance. That's all I'm going to say about that. Speaking of cancel culture, one of my last questions is around this idea of redemption. I've been really curious about that. It's the little Catholic schoolgirl in me, I think.
Sure.
But just in relation to this topic, right?
Yeah.
It's like, does everyone deserve redemption? Are there failures that people shouldn't come back from? Or, or did cancel culture show us that actually we push things too far and we need to have a society that does forgive? Like, what's your perspective
I think this is
on
one
that?
of the most important conversations that society needs to have right now. Like, if we have lost faith in the whole concept of redemption. I think that shakes the very foundations of like the kind of pseudo, Christian world, whatever that is right now. But like we're looking at a fundamental shift in our values as a society if we don't believe in redemption. And this is America. It's supposed to be like the second chance, the underdog. And I know this is different because cancel culture was very often it started in resistance to really dark things, rape, sexual assault, racism, things that we do want to purge from society. But we have to ask ourselves, can we get out of groupthink where we cancel culture reached a point where we were rather terrified of the mob. Now,
and also everything became so binary. It's like, this person's either in or they're out, they're cancelled or they're not cancelled. Like, I just feel like we lost nuance.
We totally lost nuance.
And we've lost nuance across so many things. I mean, I think social media is a big part of that. It just has to be, we have to understand it in a swipe or a headline, and there's no nuance in that.
We did lose nuance because we lost trust. We decided that like we'd seen someone's character and anything else would mean they were like lying. That they were completely personified by this one thing. And so what we've still not come to terms with is there a way to not basically cancel someone completely? Are people ever able to come back?
It's like, does everyone deserve redemption?
And I think some do.
Yeah.
I think others don't, in terms of, I mean, like right now while we're talking, the most extreme end of this cultural moment we're living through is, Sean Diddy Coombs in
it's
court.
happening right now.
Right.
It's like, literally downtown right now.
That's a criminal trial, so it's easier to say.
It's easier,
redemption, if it's written in law, is a different thing. But societal redemption for lesser crimes, not even crimes, but like crimes, cultural crimes, society's not having that conversation yet. And instead, we've seen this massive overcorrection where people are like, well, fuck everybody and I don't care and I'll say offensive things and I'm anti-woke, and so I don't think that's the answer either.
My last question for you, and then we're jumping into quickfire.
Okay.
So obviously you are about to give birth to a beautiful child.
What are you talking about? How dare you?
Very soon.
Can a girl have some raviolis?
I actually did freak out. I was like, wait, I thought we were allowed to talk about it. At some point you're going to have to sit down and talk to your child about these sorts of things, about failure and redemption and risk-taking and all those things. Like, I mean, maybe you haven't even thought about it yet, but, what would that conversation look like?
I have thought about it, actually, because I've thought a lot about how the younger generation at the minute, teenagers and early 20s, struggle with mental health a lot more than our generation. And I've thought about how do you build resilience in a child turning adult without damaging their self-esteem by trying to make them too type A. Like, how do you do that?
It's that soft resilience that I think we're talking about. Like,
exactly.
That's like, you want to be resilient and tough, but you don't want to be so tough that you don't let people help you, or you don't kind of, have softness in your life.
Yes.
When you figure that out with a child, let me know.
I honestly think the truth is, I think we overestimate how much we can actually teach a child as opposed to show a child.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an arsenal of things we can use. First of all, humor,
Definitely.
which gives perspective.
So crucial.
Like having the child watch me struggle with challenges, but learn to laugh.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that my husband has a phenomenal sense of humor.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And just this aliveness that doesn't let things sort of get too dark and heavy.
It's very true.
And that's going to be really, really helpful. And I also think simply, the reality is recognizing your life is bigger than this one experience. It's not a reflective of who you are as a person.
Exactly. That's such a nice way to end on. It's not a reflection of who you are. It's a moment. It's not. It's not part of your identity.
You're loved unconditionally.
Yeah.
And
you can fail without being a failure.
Precisely.
2 different things.
Totally.
2 different things. 10 quick fire.
Okay.
Okay. What book are you reading right now?
Ooh, I just started. Sorry, I have to think about the title now.
She's probably reading 5. That's why
she's
always got multiple books on her nightstand.
I've just started. I've forgotten the writer, but A History of Love, which is
so nice,
beautiful.
Look at you getting soft as you're about to become a mum.
I know. I used to read like nonfiction books about war.
Yeah.
And I went through this period, in my life a couple of years ago where I decided I have to get back to reading fiction. And so I'm getting better at that. I just finished reading The Sympathizer, which won the Nobel Prize by the Vietnamese American writer whose name I've forgotten as well.
It's okay.
Which was really dark and brilliant and funny.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good mix.
Mm-hmm.
What feels riskier to you, being a war reporter or an entrepreneur?
Definitely entrepreneur.
That is wild.
There's a much higher fail rate.
That is wild to me. What's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Most people would be surprised to learn that I am afraid all the time. Not like I have a problem, but like like no part of me is fearless.
Yeah. That almost makes me cry. Which is more valuable to you, raw talent or relentless persistence?
Oh, the latter by far. Relentless persistence. I don't even really believe in raw talent.
I love it. What's been legacy media's biggest failure?
Vanity.
Do you want to expand on that?
Believing
briefly?
that no one else can do it quite like they can.
Yes. Enter Noosphere.
Enter Noosphere.
Dream dinner party guest, dead or alive?
A dream dinner party guest would be like a cool couple. Like I would say like Cillian Murphy would be kind of cool because he's sort of mysterious.
Yes.
I'd want to pull a chair up and be like,
let's invite him to the next one.
Definitely.
I think if you DM'd him.
You think so? I'll DM him right now.
Maybe. Let's get Cillian Murphy at the next.
Also, if I'm honest, Melania Trump.
Yes, she would be actually them
3
together.
3 martinis down, I'd be like, let's talk.
If Cillian Murphy comes, I promise I won't ask him if
you can touch his hair.
No, he was an actor.
Would that make him feel uncomfortable?
Are you also in media?
Could I just stroke your hair?
Can we please tell the funny story about the I have to tell this. So Jane and her husband Charlie throw incredible dinner parties, to which I've been to many, and there's always just like a fabulous group of people there from lots of different, aspects of the world. And there was one dinner party and I was sitting next to this very interesting gentleman, and we had a lot of martinis, a lot of wine, having a great time. And we were mostly just talking about skydiving and extreme sports. I don't know how we got onto that topic. But, after a few martinis, at one point I turned around and I said to him, I was like, so are you also in media? I didn't even ask him, are you in media? I was like, are you also in media? Like I am some media titan. And the table went semi-silent. And I was like, oh God. And he was so good about it. And I think you got up or someone, it was just politely was like, yes, he is the founder of MTV. I was like,
and former CEO of Viacom.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, so nice to meet you. That is my cue to leave. This has been great. I will see you.
He's the most humble person in the world.
No, totally.
I thought that was true. I mean, and you can't
No, anyway, it's just it's always stuck with me as a hilarious story. He was so good about it.
That was very funny.
So dream dinner party guest is obviously me, but that's fine.
Obviously.
Okay. People often ask me if I have a leadership role model. Who's yours?
Ooh, I have been very impressed with, it's in the news a lot right now, with Warren Buffett's sense of humility and warmth. And I think, as cliched as it is to say, Steve Jobs was an extraordinary visionary leader. I think if you could create a Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs hybrid, that would be, maybe you could never. And I just think what matters most right now is role modeling, because there's such an ugly role model, role modeling out there right now, especially for young men.
Yeah.
And Warren Buffett was a man who loved his wife, who loved his family, who didn't show off his wealth, who lived in the same place he lived in his whole life. Like, I just think what we need right now is good people, you know, and he was a good man. Sorry, I shouldn't talk about him like he's dead. He's retired, that's all. But like, he is, let's cut he is a good man.
Totally.
And
I think that's a great answer.
Whenever we look at a lot of other similarly wealthy people, you know, it's hard to look for role models anymore.
It's a great answer. What book do you wish you had written?
I read one of the greatest like novels I've ever read is a book by a writer called Anthony Mara, and it's called A Constellation of Vital Phenomenon, and it's based in Chechnya, and it's about sisters and their bond. And I've never read a book so beautifully written that so well encompasses the human experience during conflict. And I read it like while I was writing my book, and every time I picked it up I was like, oh God, this is so good. I wish I could write
Your
like
book
this.
is also so good.
Thank you.
Also moved me to tears. It was good.
That's sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, this is maybe there's two more questions, but this is maybe my favorite. Do you think, is power earned, taken, or given?
True power is earned. You know, I think power that's taken is usually pretty short-lived.
Yeah.
I've covered enough revolutions to know people end up with blood on the doorstep. Power, I don't think, is ever really given. I think that it's usually earned.
Final question. Not such a quick fire, but maybe. What do you want your legacy to be?
To inspire. You know, I think we spend so much time trying to impact the world, and the true impact that any of us have is just to inspire. And it's like, it's truly immeasurable. When I was a little girl, I just watched these women on TV, and they don't even know that I'm here because of them.
That's such a nice note to end on. You are an inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
This was a great chat.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I loved it too. It's just like us normally, just without the wine, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just vodka. So it's actually
no vodka. And yeah, we'll put like the links to Noosphere and everything in the show notes so people can have a look at that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
This was awesome.
If you liked this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. While you're at it, please drop a comment and let me know what resonated with you. I'd love to hear your take. And as always, I'd be so unbelievably grateful if you could share your favorite episode with a friend. It really is the only way an independent podcast like this can be discovered.